Here at Vibe Science, ultimately, we're here to empower you to your best self. It's about mind, body, and energy. And you know what? When you work out a lot, when you're eating a healthy diet, it's hard to get enough sodium. It is one of the most important factors in hydration, and hydration controls so many variables of how we feel, how our brain thinks. That's why we're proud to partner with Warrior Salt. Hey, we like to take the BS out of stuff. This is no bullshit, just electrolytes, straight fruit powder and salt, the real deal. I love this product because it's simple. Sometimes we get overcomplicated in the supplements we take, but all I know and what I've learned and the science has proven is you have to have enough salt for that balance of hydration. This stuff mixes really easy with water, as you see. You got to be watching the YouTube to get the full effect of this. How easy that mixes in, and a very simple citrus flavor that's delicious, easy to drink, and perfect before and after the exercise to stay hydrated. Look, if you're already thirsty, you've waited too long. That's why you need Warrior Salt, official partner of Vibe Science and Ryan Alford. Delicious and will keep you hydrated all day long.
On Christmas Day 2022, I attempted suicide. Thank God for 988, I am alive today and extremely thankful to be alive. There was a little voice in my head saying that things were going to get better. There is still a lot of shame. There is still a lot of stigma. People still view us as weak because we can't fix ourselves. A lot of times it's not something that we can fix on our own. You know, you have bad chemicals in your head that need to be like rewired. There's a lot of dicks out there. I'm sorry. But if you don't have anything nice to say, maybe don't say anything at all, because you actually have zero idea what's going on with somebody unless you know them personally. Like, just be nice. It costs you absolutely nothing to be nice.
This is Vibe Science, a top 100 wellness podcast presented by the Radcast Network, breaking wellness barriers and making health truly personal. Here are your hosts, Ryan Alford and Chris Hansen.
Hello, and welcome to Vibe Science. We're always here to take you to your highest vibe. It's about mind, body, and energy. Energy is vibe. And you know, when we go down, we get a lot of requests for our show now. Chris has gotten really popular on Instagram. So we get a lot of requests, but sometimes we go and seek out our own. And today's guest is one of those. She is G-Rex. She's the creator and co-host of Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. What's up, G-Rex?
Wow. Thank you. What an awesome introduction. I'm so excited to be here.
It's fun.
Great day.
Hey,
yeah.
You know, I tell you, I'm a creative advertising guy for 20 plus years. And so creative titles get my attention. And, you know, you could go mental health podcast, you know, the lighter side of mental health. No, shit that goes on in our heads. I love it.
It's funny when we were like coming up with the name for the podcast, like we went through like 20 different iterations because we were trying to get something that would pass, you know, Spotify, Google, and Apple. And so we tried everything. We tried the real name. That didn't work. So then we tried the asterisk and the exclamation point. We finally just ended up with the exclamation point. And like, really, shit's not such a bad word, but you know, whatever.
No, it's not. I think, especially when you put the exclamation point in it, then it's just kind of fun. You know, it keeps the power, but it sort of deflates it a little bit, and obviously gets through the sensors, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah. Well, that was test number one. Is it going to make it through the sensor? So we ended up with that name, and we just laughed about it all the time.
Did that immediately put you on the explicit list for the podcast? Just having that name alone.
The minute you put the word shit in anything, it's explicit.
Hopefully you had a party for that. You know, I don't know whether to celebrate or be sad when we got that marker too. I think, you know, cursing, falling, who knows what's in our episodes. And, you know, last episode we were talking about libido, and I don't even know what. We got to get down some rabbit holes here on Vibe Science. But it's always funny. I'm like, you know, because when you think about like growing up, I'm going on to a complete tangent, but hey, this is what makes podcasting great. You know, when you're growing up, it's R-rated, it's explicit. it attracts you. Oh, I got to listen. So maybe it's having that reverse psychology, like, yeah, pulling more people in.
It does. We get a lot of comments about the name, and then once they find out what the podcast is about, and they start listening, they're like, "God, this is nothing like any other mental health podcast out there." And that's kind of what we were aiming for. Yeah.
There it is. I'm always joined by Chris down in hot Miami. Hey, Chris, G-Rex and I were talking. She got the hell out of South Florida and went up north. So you guys are on different ends here, but I think you guys she used to be in that same stomping territory. I don't know where you were, G-Rex, in South Florida.
We were in just outside of Fort Lauderdale by about 20 minutes.
Yep.
But it got too hot and too people-y.
Very hot this time of year. It's a steam room down here right now.
It was gross. And I lived through enough hurricanes to last me a lifetime, so I will take snow over a hurricane any day.
And more power to you. I might follow your lead here in the next couple of years.
It can be exhausting. I mean, having to think about that, like every other, I don't know, week when it's this time of year through, I don't know, when October now. It seems to be extending every month, but
yeah,
it's crazy.
It's just hot. It's what it is. It's hot and gross.
Yeah. I just had to drag my dog outside. He was not into it. It was a quick, literally 20 seconds outside and back in.
He's like, I am done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He would much more prefer the snow too.
I need an air-conditioned pee pad.
Yeah.
And I'm not going out anymore. I get it. Like, I didn't want to go outside either. It's hot.
Talk to us about shit that goes on in our heads. I think that alone and why and how and when you started it sets up a lot of your story and what you're doing, G-Rex. So maybe we just start there.
Perfect. So the podcast started because of me. On Christmas Day 2022, I attempted suicide. Thank God for 988. I am alive today and extremely thankful to be alive. There was a little voice in my head saying that things were going to get better. And so, the day after I called 988 and went through a really painful day, I opened up onto social media to let people know what was going on. I'm a true extrovert and an empath, and nobody knew how depressed I was, not even my wife. And I had about 200 people reach back out to me and say thank you, because now they felt seen and heard, and they weren't alone in their own depression. So that was my first healer. And then my second healer was laughter. And my co-host, Dirty Skittles, we worked together. We had worked together for about 7 years. And so every day we would call each other and we would laugh about shit you should never, ever, ever, ever laugh about. But here's what happens when you laugh, right? It reduces that cortisol and gets some serotonin going and gets your endorphins up. And so no matter how crappy the day is, you can circle back on that conversation and just start laughing again. And so it's during one of those conversations, she's like, hey, we should do a podcast. And I'm like, okay, let's do a podcast. So we released our first episode on February 14th, 2023. In honor of my mom. I buried my mom in 1997 on Valentine's Day. And as part of my healing journey, I kind of wanted to change the trajectory of that day and make it a little less crappy. And so we released, and we thought, oh, God, we're just going to do 3 episodes. We're just going to do this as fun. Okay, joke was on us. Come April, we'd already gotten 10,000 downloads. And I'm like, who the fuck's listening to us? In the early days, we were just idiots. Right. But when I had thought about my own journey and going through my own mental health, there wasn't another podcast out there like ours. A lot of the mental health podcasts were very clinical, very dry, didn't feel like they were helpful. And we wanted to make sure that in every episode, no matter how hard the subject was, is that we injected a little laughter into that. And people would be like, how can you laugh about really hard stuff? Well, when you interject laughter in with really hard stuff, it makes it easier to digest.
I think things like mental health and suicide and all that are very difficult, and you know better than anyone, for people to talk about or to share. And I think there's this diffusing thing that happens with humor that I think, on one hand, you could say, well, you mitigate it or you diminish it. But you know what? Like, whatever it takes to allow the conversation to happen, I think is healthy. And who wouldn't like G-Rex and Dirty Skittles? I mean, that alone should win an award.
Well, what it is about podcasting is that for us, like, we don't release the audio or we don't release the video unless we have a guest that asks for it.
Yeah.
But it's a safe space. It's usually just the three of us. And these are people that sometimes haven't shared their story with anybody else, right? Mm. And they feel very comfortable behind the microphone. And to me, that is the coolest thing. If we can make somebody feel comfortable enough to, tell their story and give people like hope and give them maybe some tips and tricks or resources that we didn't know about, that's the beauty of this. And with podcasts, especially like with our podcast, right? We are listened to across the world. We are not geographically regulated like TV and radio are. People are listening to us in Australia. We have listeners in Turkey and Russia. Don't ask me how any of that translates. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how do we translate fuck in Japanese, because I say it enough on the podcast to be like, wonder how that translates. But, both our guests and our listeners have always told us that it feels like they're sitting around the campfire just shooting the shit with friends, right? We make it super easy, super comfortable. We're not scripted by any means. We've done the same countdown since day one. So we count down with our fingers. We do 3, 2, and at 1, we flip each other off. Well, there was only one time that Dirty Skittles didn't do that, and she didn't tell me until after we recorded the episode. We had a lady on. She's a little over 75, and when I do the countdown, I close my eyes so I can keep up with the cadence. And so, like, I flipped everybody off. She calls me afterwards. She's like, I didn't flip her off. I'm like, well, now that makes me the dick. So, like, I reached back out to the guest. She's like, oh, I've been flipped off before. It was okay. And I'm like, oh, I feel a little better. But now, like, when I do the pre-interviews, I warn people. And then we warn them the day that we record. It just kind of like sets the tone and makes everybody laugh. And, we want to make our guests feel at ease. And I think that, and what we've heard back from our listeners and guests is that they feel at ease around us.
What's the common theme, if there are any? And maybe it's just, between the people you've talked to, the stories you've heard in sort of the mental health, I don't know, pandemic, whatever the hell you want to call it. I mean, it's clearly larger than I think we give it credit for. We talk about, and I struggle with this. I'll be honest. I'm not immune to mental health struggle. I mean, we all have, but I'm also try to be the positive guy, right. That's just my nature. Like, I want to rise above it while not diminishing others, who struggle with it maybe more than I do. And that's a struggle for me. Like, I have empathy and I have sympathy sometimes, but like, are there common themes that you hear and in this whole, journey you've been on?
Yeah. So like a lot of it, like I can even think back to my own story. There is still a lot of shame. There is still a lot of stigma. People still view us as weak because we can't fix ourselves. A lot of times it's not something that we can fix on our own. You have bad chemicals in your head that need to be like rewired. Thankfully for me, I didn't take medication. I just really poured myself into therapy, and not just like talk therapy. There's all sorts of therapy that I do. But from our guests, those are the same things that they feel too. The shame, the weakness, the stigma. And my hope is like for podcasts like yours and mine and, the Gretchen Rubins of the world and everybody out there, is that we're helping to remove that stigma and that it's okay to talk about it. I can honestly say, like, even on LinkedIn, I'm getting more and more engagement on my posts. and from companies and from leaders at companies, knowing that they need to like be a little bit more cognizant of like what's going on with people's mental health. And that's like the common theme is like people just want to talk about it now. You know, we are all I was raised in a generation where you don't talk about it. So when I was going through my own journey, as I said before, I couldn't find a good podcast like ours. Like they were all dry and clinical and boring. And like I turn it on and go to sleep in like 5 minutes. With ours, and not to like boost my ego or anything, but you know, we have laughter and we make it feel real, and people are very vulnerable and do want to share their stories. And I think that's what's going to help us to change the trajectory of how we view mental health going forward, is in these like little bite-sized chunks. And in our case, it's like 45 minutes or 2 episodes, but it's one story at a time.
Yeah. I mean, well, they say give a person a purpose, you give them a life. Like we're just built that way, I think, you know, like, and I think when you don't have a purpose, a goal, like I think we're wired for that. And I think that's where the only thing with, you know, all the conveniences that we have now in some ways. And I don't know, it's important to have things that we look forward to and that we feel like we contribute. And I think that's universal, no matter, I think it, race, kind, male, female, like as humans, we all, you know, have that desire to have purpose. And I think that's the common thread. It's also, you know, you said something that I think, you know, I've been guilty of this, not understanding, you know, mental health completely. And I think the chemical thing, it's like, I think as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser, it's not judgment or like I don't think people are weak. You know, I'm more focused in my own lane and worry about myself. But I do think there's education to be had in understanding what people, not only for the people going through it, but the people that aren't, with what happens or what's going on that's different, because we all have a hard time sometimes thinking outside of our own experience and knowing, well, what would it feel like to have this chemical imbalance, right?
I can tell you what it feels like. It feels like you're going crazy. So everything happened to me. I was 59 and a half. You know, I was raised my entire life that we don't talk about what's going on in our head. Well, that's all well and good until it absolutely has no place to go. So, you know, Christmas Day rolled around and there was no place for it to go. And I needed to get it out. And the thing for me is like I couldn't find my voice or my footing because I didn't understand what was going on in my own head. I was mad at myself because I couldn't fix myself. People would come up to me like, "Hey, how's your day going?" I'd be like, "I'm fine." You know, on the outside I looked fine. On the inside, I was not doing fine. You know, this is a shout out to anybody that's an extrovert and an empath. If you have that mask on, take it off, because the only person you're hurting is yourself. Because you eventually are going to wake up one day where I was on Christmas Day and be like, what the fuck? So like, take care of yourself. And, you know, there's a lot of buzzwords out there about self-love and self-care. But honestly, if you are not taking care of yourself, you're not doing a very good job of taking care of anybody else. And that was me. I did not take care of me. But now I do. And like, if you haven't set boundaries now, maybe set some boundaries. Don't wait until you're 60 to do it. No is a beautiful word.
Yeah. And I think this show is, you know, built on the premise of, you know, optimizing oneself for that very reason, so that you go to your highest vibe. But it's not because you're self-serving, but it's because of what you just said. Because if we aren't optimizing at our best, whatever that is for any one individual, then we aren't good for ourselves or anyone else.
Yeah, like you can't show up. If you can't show up for yourself, how are you going to show up for anybody else? And, you know, once I learned how to show up for myself, it was life-changing. Like, you know, once I learned how to put my shield up a little bit faster, because being an empath, you know, we take on everybody else's pain. once I learned how to put that shield up and I could shield some of that away, life-changing.
It's powerful. And I think, for our listeners, maybe talk about some of the coping mechanisms, some of the things that you guys talk about or hear, or things that you've used that might could help people avoid these darker paths or getting too far down them. Like, what are some things you've both learned and then have implemented or tested yourself?
The first one is like open up sooner. Like if you even if you think you can heal yourself, open up to somebody. Find that safe spot. If you don't have a safe space or somebody to talk to, call the 988 crisis and suicide hotline. They are there for that specific reason. It's a lifeline. The other thing that I've done, and I started this practice in January, is I watch a 20-minute funny video every morning just to break up the cortisol. It's the first thing I do when I wake up. And lately it's been raccoons, squirrels, chickens, and goats. Don't ask me why that order, but it's that order. And then after I watch that funny video, because now I've started laughing, I have a gratitude practice and I state out loud what I'm grateful for every single day. The other thing that we've been talking a lot about lately is just find your joy. No matter how depressed you are, you can always find one thing during the day to make you laugh and to bring you a little joy. Joy kind of helps change up the trajectory in your head. And so joy could be maybe a kid laughing or going out and, getting out into nature. I know in some places in the country, it's way too hot to go outside. And in a few months, it's going to be way too cold to go outside. But find that joy inside.
Where do you feel like, you're obviously doing a podcast and seeing the benefits that you're providing to other people, and yourself, right? And so I'd call that new media, and then social media, which gets stigmaed with causing all this depression and everything else. I take issue with that personally, though I think it can, if not digested the right way. I mean, where do you fall on the axis of social media and media in general as it relates to mental health?
I think as media providers out there, we can do a whole lot better. There are, I will say in the state of New York, over the last 5 or 6 months, I've seen more and more mention of 988, which warms my heart. It means that people are actually taking this seriously. But with social media, for us, we try not to, we'll post once a day, but it's not heavy stuff. We try at least for shit, I try and make it as light and digestible as possible with some good information, things that have come up during any of our episodes. But I don't want to drown people either, because there is, people get too compassionate, right? It can really drag you in. And I don't know. I think the world just needs to be a little kinder. Okay, there's a lot of dicks out there. I'm sorry, but if you don't have anything nice to say, maybe don't say anything at all, because you actually have zero idea what's going on with somebody unless you know them personally. Just be nice. It costs you absolutely nothing to be nice. And the same thing goes with podcast reviews, right? If you don't like a podcast that you've listened to, okay, maybe instead of giving us a 1 and a negative review, maybe just move on. Because, nobody needs, we need constructive criticism, but if you just write back and your show sucks, okay, that's not very creative and not helpful.
Well, I think the negativity out there, I don't know what it is. I've seen a lot of that lately. I feel like I was I heard people talk about all that, and I'm again, maybe I'm Pollyanna sometimes. I'm but then lately I've seen it. I saw it at a show the last few days, and I saw a few things, and wow, people really do take joy in this, I don't know, trolling and negativity side. And I don't understand where that comes from. They're clearly hurting more than anyone, I would guess. you hear that, and I just assume that has to be, because I just can't imagine being that miserable.
Yeah, it costs nothing to be nice. Nothing, right? Like, just be. We're in a weird place. It's, right now, like, the world is literally on fire, and we just need to be a little nicer to each other. Don't have anything nice today. Didn't your mom always tell you, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all? It's pretty simple. Okay, same thing with posting. If you don't have anything nice to post, maybe don't post anything at all. But, I think as podcasters, we have a responsibility to kind of counter some of that, right? So every time we see something negative, we put out something positive. I try not to call people out because I don't need the drama. Listen, I'm 62 years old. I don't need that drama anymore. I just don't. But I do want to see the world heal. And I want us to all be really cognizant of how we do that. And just be nicer to each other.
Chris, any questions here for G-Rex?
Well, I just want to compliment what you just said, which I think is a huge thing, is it should almost be our duty, if you see something negative, to try to put something positive out. I think that little tip alone could do so much good in the world, because there's so much negative, right? Even if it involves us directly or not, right? You're just scrolling and there's just so much negative everywhere. And I had some message from some kid last night, like, the IRS is coming for you. And I'm like, why? Like, what are you even talking about, bro? And I'm like, how do you even gather that from my page, right? But I'm just thinking, okay, well, clearly this person's probably pretty unhappy or whatever, projecting their own stuff. But that doesn't mean I need to go blast them or do something negative. Just keep doing your thing, stay positive. And unfortunately, it's almost like the empath's job now to almost be the warriors on the front line of this, right? Which is tough.
It's exhausting.
Yes, because I would consider myself an empath too. It's really hard to not absorb it all when, like you, I think I'm do this because I want to do good and spread good, and not necessarily, none of us need to be doing this, right? It's not like it's probably paying our bills. So, I know me and Ryan started this just to try to educate people and inform people and some of the tips and tricks of what's worked for me. And that would lead me to kind of what would be some easy, actionable, you said, I know, watching some funny videos, which I absolutely love that. That's one thing I've definitely never heard in a morning routine of all the people. Everyone's got a morning routine nowadays. And that's definitely not one I've heard, is watch cat and goat videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But outside
Chug
of that,
water now. No, listen to funny videos.
Literally, right. It's like get sunlight, journal, meditate. Hey, maybe watching some funny videos, which I did that this morning, not intentionally, but there's a page I follow that it posts a lot of kind of animal and nature videos. And you know what? It was amazing. It was exactly what I needed today. So I would say, what are some other daily practices you do? And even you said that you've done therapies, but not traditional talk therapy. Kind of what else have you done in that realm? Because that's stuff people aren't super familiar with, right? Outside of traditional talk therapy. What are just some actionable tips for our listeners?
Cool things you can do. If you garden, go out and play in your garden. Brings a lot of joy and a little bit of food into my belly. I also color. Coloring is just good. It just takes me out of my headspace, and I have to focus on the color. I journal first thing in the morning, last thing at night. I go through my journal once a week. If I look at the stuff that made me happy, I keep. The stuff that didn't make me happy gets wadded up and is going to go in the fire pit in the fall. The other thing you can do is find something that makes you happy. Happiness, can change your mindset really, really quick. The other thing that, I've started doing on Sundays is I do a Sunday check-in. I text my friends, probably 50, 60 friends. I text them and see how they're doing. And I ask them a question that they actually have to answer. That connection, especially for extroverts, and empaths is pretty important. You know, we live in a digital age. A lot of times we don't see people face to face, which is okay. I mean, I felt like I was being, punished during COVID, but, that's another story. And being intentional about what you're doing, being intentional about what are some things that can help me stay out of my head. You can also exercise a little bit. It doesn't have to be heavy lifting. You don't have to go to a gym. You can do some wall squats. I mean, I tried that the other day. I thought I was going to break a hip, but I try and do just little things that when my head is spinning out of control of how to self-regulate. Another huge tip is get off of social media. On Sundays, I don't do any social media at all. And since the 20th of January, I've turned off every news notification on my phone because everything now is breaking news. Yeah. Okay, you know what? It's not breaking me. It's going to break me if I read it. Right. But doing that and being intentional about any kind of discussions I have around politics and religion, both things that rile me up and I don't like to talk a lot about. But those are things that are in the news right now. So step away from your TV. And if you can, get out into nature. Nature is one of the most healing things you can do. If you're listening to this episode and it's December and you're in New York, I give you permission to go watch TV because nobody wants to get dressed. But I want people to realize that you don't have to face this stuff alone and that there's always somebody out there that can help you, no matter what.
Beautiful.
G-Rex, it's clear that you have a lot to share with the world and the popularity of your show growing. A lot of people resonating with it. And I mean, who wouldn't resonate with 30 Skittles and G-Rex? Yeah. I like clean Skittles myself, but if I'm going to eat them, but from a creativity name and attention grabbing, that does it. But it's clear you have a lot to share. It's clear that there's a purpose for you, and it's serving others in a way that's really positive. And we really appreciate you for coming on the show and sharing your story. I'd love for you to share where people can learn more about your show and what you guys are doing.
Perfect. Yeah, you can go out to our website. It's goesononourheads.net. All our socials are out there. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Don't ask me to do TikTok. I'm 62 years old. It's not going to happen. And we do our podcast does go out onto YouTube, but it's an audio only. We have captions on there because we do have some deaf listeners to the podcast. So if you want, you can go out there and read the captions. And that's how people can reach us.
Amazing. We really appreciate you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hey guys, you know where to find us. Vibescience.com, at Chris Broby Hansen and at Ryan Alford on Instagram. And hey, you're thinking about writing something negative, if you're having negative thoughts, if you are being that guy, stop. Think about what you're doing. Let's be positive. Let's spread the positive word. Let's go to our highest vibe. We'll see you next time on Vibe Science.
The content discussed on this show is provided for reference and educational purposes. The content is not an attempt to practice medicine or provide specific medical advice. Always consult your personal physician for medical advice and proper diagnosis.
Thanks for listening. This is Vibe Science. To learn more or watch full episodes, visit vibesciencepodcast.com. Here's to discovering your highest vibe.